Добрый день, друзья. Скажите, меня видно, слышно?
Да, видно, слышно.
Hi, Joel.
I
Let's continue our slow reading of Mark. Is it the correct English expression, slow reading?
sure, yeah, that works.
Yes. Because in Russian, this becomes almost a technical term, uh, медленное чтение. Is it the same with English?
I I don't think so. I'd never heard it before, but I don't know what the alternative would be. Meditative reading, contemplative, but those
Our
have different.
reading, I think that our reading is more philological than contemplative.
Yeah, true.
When we first started this soon after the beginning of the war, we thought that it should be a contemplative, almost devotional reading. But because of the predominance of philologists
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
our team, it slightly moved here, genre.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think those two things are necessarily contradictory. You can be a philologist and also contemplate.
Yes, exactly. That's what we are trying to do.
Yes, and succeeding.
Thank you. We stopped last time, as far as I remember, while discussing what would have been the meaning of the expression the meaning of the expression Proslabominus Petros auton erxato epitiman auto. We have spoken a lot about different aspects of the verb epitimao, but it seems that here we came to one more question linked to this verb. Namely, I asked, what was it exactly that Peter wanted Jesus to prevent doing or to stop doing?
Mhm.
Whether the thing that Peter objects here to is Jesus going to Jerusalem in order to be arrested and crucified, whether the thing that he wanted to stop and to prevent was Jesus talking about this.
Uh,
As far as I remember, you said that we haven't heard about any suggestion to read this text, verse 32, in this way.
Not that I remember.
Yes, but the context where the verb epitimao is used maybe speaks in favor of this interpretation. I'm not insisting, I'm just asking. And if you don't mind, I would like once again to look at these contexts. This would be not the first time we look at the context of this verb, but we haven't looked at it with this particular question in mind. Is it okay?
That's fine. The more time on epitomao, the better.
Okay.
It's an important
Thank you.
verb.
Yes. Then I open our Bible program. Let's look first at Epitimao and Mark. We did it once, but not from this particular point of view. I would argue that Epitimao is first of all, that's the verb of speech. Someone says something, then this is a rather harsh speech. Second point. Third point is that usually the goal is to stop someone from doing something or to prevent. And then the most important point, or probably at least the most pertinent to our present question, is that the goal is to stop doing something that is going on at the point of speech, not to prevent something that is to be done tomorrow or in a month's time, but to stop doing someone from doing something. For example, here we have Mark 1:25. Do you see the screen? Okay. Jesus tells the demon to stop some activity, namely disclosing Jesus' identity, which the demon is doing just at that moment. This is the same meaning. Here Jesus tells the wind, or rebuked the wind, in order that the wind should stop being a hindrance to the boat of the disciples. Mark 8:30. Epitimus in our choice. Here Peter, just at this moment, proclaims Jesus Messiah. And Jesus forbids him or them to disclose his identity. Does this Epitimus here has the goal of preventing them from doing something in the future? Jesus just stops Peter like, do not continue speaking about this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making a good case. I guess I might propose that, from like this point on, Jesus is headed up to Jerusalem. He's on the road to Jerusalem, and Peter is trying to stop him from something that he has started to do, that is to go up to Jerusalem, where he's just said he will suffer and die. So I'm not sure the this philological observation that you've made necessarily means that it refers directly to this, what Jesus has just, or, just to the fact that he's talking. But it could be, what he's talking about.
Okay. Okay. My idea was just to draw our attention to this philological.
Yeah. Well, and let's look at, as we come to them, let's look at the coming references
Okay.
to epitimon. I wanted to mention there's a famous gospel hymn that was sung by African American singer Mahalia Jackson, who was very well known in the 1950s and 1960s, and she was, with Martin Luther King in the March on Washington in the 60s. Anyway, she sang a song called "I've Been Buked and I've Been Scorned." So it's a shortening of the word rebuked, but it's in African American dialect. I've been buked and I've been scorned. And the whole point is, I've suffered all these degradations, but God will keep me.
Okay.
Just a philological observation about that word. I think the shortening is interesting.
Okay. So in Mark 8:31, Jesus is not just predicting something that is to occur in some future, but he is already on that way, and he discloses to the disciples that he has already started going that path.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to add that, this phrase "on the way," ente hodo, occurs throughout this section. I think it occurs in chapter 8
Yes,
and
that's
chapter 9 and chapter 10. Yeah, always in conjunction with these passion predictions. So I think that's an important theme and motif, and I would relate that back to the beginning of the gospel, where John the Baptist comes to prepare the way of the Lord, and then that's drawing on Isaiah and this motif of God making a road, like bringing the people back from exile.
okay. Since this entohodo is so important, your idea of how to combine the image of Peter trying to prevent not just Jesus talking about his future fate, but Peter trying to prevent this Jesus from following this path, and that this our small philological observation about the verb epitimao, that one who does that kind of rebuke tries to stop something that is already on the way. Yes, you suggested that kaento hado here in Mark 8:27 is a reference to Jesus going to Jerusalem.
Well,
Is-
yeah, and especially that becomes clear at the end of this section in the Bartimaeus passage, because Bartimaeus is healed of his blindness and he follows him in the way. And then immediately they're up in Jerusalem.
Yes, but
Yeah.
here, in the immediate context of the verse we're talking about, Rehodos is rather a road, eistas komas, Caesareis, tes Philippu.
Yeah.
So
Right.
is this
That's true.
already, should they understand this Hodos as already beginning of the Hodos to Jerusalem?
Well, that's the way I want to understand it. I'm not sure if it makes sense geographically, but this term is, as I said, repeated in 9:33. What were you talking about in the way? And then in 10:32, they were in the way going up to Jerusalem. So by then, by 10:32, it's clear that it's directed towards Jerusalem.
Okay, so the is, as far as I understand, you would like to say that though geographically the movements are in different directions and they're different geographical hodoi, but metaphorically or metaphysically, all these hodoi are just parts of one hodos, namely towards Jerusalem.
That's what I want to say, and
Okay.
the background is really this Deutero-Isaiah, uh, picture of God like sweeping into the Holy Land, bringing the people back in triumph. But of course, the Markan twist on that is this triumph is going to happen through very strange means of victory, through death and seeming defeat.
Okay.
But it's partly because of this larger theological construct that I have that I'm resisting your speech interpretation.
no, it was not.
But
I was not.
I acknowledge that that you're building a strong case.
Thank you. But okay, I agree. My main argument was this philological that Petimam is rebuking and stopping someone from what he is doing. In any case, this observation brings an important nuance to this scene, because this is a hint that Jesus is already, he not only predicts his future sufferings, but he's already in the road, which corresponds well, okay, to the meaning and hodos and hodo and tehodo.
I also do wonder, sometimes how good was his geographical knowledge? And we talked about this before, where he describes a trip of Jesus that seems not to make sense, where he has to go through the Decapolis to get, I don't know, from one part of Galilee to another.
Okay. Then we can move to verse 33. Verse 33. Антон Гунарович, готовы быть нашим чтецом?
Да.
Окей,
33, да?
да.
Gode epistropheis, kai idon tus matetas autou epitimesen, Petro kai legei, iupage opisomou, satana, goti u proneis, tatu theu, alata ton anthropon.
Да. Иисус, обернувшись, увидел учеников. Хочется посмотреть, что он, обернувшись, посмотрев на учеников, но и Дон, ты все-таки именно увидел. Да? Мы говорили про то, что здесь словно бы восстанавливается вот в этом жесте оборота и взгляда на учеников, то некое единство пространства Иисуса и учеников, которое как бы нарушается в предшествующем стихе, когда Петр отводит его, имеется в виду, очевидно, от учеников в сторону. Эпистрофейс кайдонтус, да, увидев учеников, и запретил Петру. Пока что мы придерживаемся вот этого эквивалента в качестве стандартного нашего ключевого эпитимау. Вот здесь я не уверен, что я правильно перевел. Я не знаю, как раз на этом я бы хотел сейчас, чтобы мы остановились. Прочь от меня, враг. Потому что ты думаешь не о Божьем, а о человеческом. Потому что ты думаешь не о Божьем, а о человеческом. Это, мне кажется, более-менее беспроблемный перевод вот его фронейс татутеу ла татон антропон. А вот предшествующие фразы юпг, глагол, описо, предлог, обращение сатана, все три слова требуют, конечно же, комментариев.
Have you translated Satanas as vrag
Yep.
elsewhere?
In our Old Testament, New Russian Old Testament translation, we have chosen, I have chosen this translation also for as Satan in the book of Job.
Uh-huh. Right, but in your Mark translation, have you usually used frog?
I don't remember exactly what was my final preliminary final decision in my translation of Matthew in the Lord's Prayer. I had some idea that probably we could end the Lord's Prayer not with «избави нас от зла» или «от злого», «избавь нас от врага», if we understand Veneros here as referring to not to evil things, but to the evil one.
Mm-hmm.
But as concerns other passages in the Gospels where Jesus talks to Diabolos or Satanas, I used the standard equivalents because I think that when the word Satanas is used with reference to the head of the evil spirits, then the Russian translation Satana would be the best one. But here I'm not sure what
Well,
is.
yeah, I can see that, here, I mean, the problem is that Peter is being an adversary and an enemy to Jesus. So that might be an argument for, going the more etymological route, which your
Yep.
translation of vrag would be.
Yes, the problem is whether this saying identifies Peter with the archdemon, or whether it's just a harsh way of saying that you are now becoming the one who opposes me.
Mhm. I mean, I think I would argue for at least, some nuance of the archdemon here, and partly because of the continuation. Hotiu ufrenes ta tu theu ala ta ton anthropon. So there's this sharp distinction between the realm of God and the realm of the human. And in view of like the prominence of evil powers elsewhere in the gospel, I would say that, Mark, in a somewhat typical apocalyptic way, is picturing, the earth as under the power of evil spirits. So to be merely in the realm of the human is to be in the realm of evil spirits. So, I mean, I certainly think there is there is also some memory here of the etymological meaning of Satanas in Hebrew and Aramaic. But I mean, partly in view of the other usages that we've already had, where it did refer to the personified power of evil, I would argue that that's in view here also.
Yes, as you see, I tried also to make this association clear by
By
using,
capitalizing, yeah.
yes, by capitalizing.
Yeah.
It's not just an enemy, but there is a hint in this capitalizing that Peter is becoming the enemy, the arch enemy,
Mhm.
with capital letter.
Yeah. Now, some people claim that this hupake opisomu is also a double entendre. That on the one hand, he's trying to put him in his place and saying, you're doing the wrong thing, basically. But also, this phrase or similar phrases are used for discipleship in Mark. So is he also saying, you've gotten out of step with me, now you have to not only stop rebuking me and stop trying to prevent me from doing what I need to do, but you need to get behind me as a disciple, as in the calls to discipleship in 1:16 to 20, for example, where Peter and his brother are called.
Yes,
And does proch otmenia, does that have that possible nuance too?
no. That's why I'm thinking about changing this wording. While preparing for our meeting of today, I looked at your commentary and also at possible parallel expressions. And it seems that probably we really have here a kind of a double entendre, probably even triple entendre. Because on the one hand, one can say that we have really very close wording in Matthew 4:10. Here, both on the level of words and expressions, Totelegi autoho Isus hypage satana. Jews addresses Satan with almost the same words,
Yeah.
though opisomu is missing here. But what is the context? The context is extremely close to our context, because Satanas, or devil, tries to stop Jesus, not by brute force, as we see in the scene of crucifixion and so on, but rather by tempting him.
Yeah, that's a good parallel. I'm not sure I've thought about that before. I should have.
And Jesus, one can say that here, when Satan tells Jesus that you should, now you're hungry, you should make these stones into loaves of bread, or when he in the next verses tells Jesus that angels should help you, and especially in the third temptation, where Jesus is tempted by the glory and might of all the kingdoms of the world. The devil, what he's doing, he's just telling Jesus, or trying to make Jesus think human things, in the terms of Mark.
Yeah, that's a very good parallel.
I think
I
it's
like that a lot. Yeah.
I think it's an important parallel, and the fact that in almost the same context, with almost the same agenda and perspective, we have almost the same expression, almost the words by Jesus. Hypage satana, hypage opisomo satana. I think this cannot be just by chance. This story of three temptations is usually taken is belonging to the Q source. So what can we say about this parallelism between the Q source, which was ignorant of Mark, and Mark, which was ignorant of the Q source?
I don't know. I mean, some link on the level of oral tradition maybe is what I usually say in such cases. But yeah, it's a very interesting overlap. But you know, the presence of the opisomou in Mark, as opposed to Matthew's temptation narrative, does open up the possibility that this isn't totally negative about Peter. And this is an important exegetical debate, you know, because some people especially point to this passage in arguing that the disciples, you know, they just get stupider and stupider as the gospel goes on, and that they represent the enemies of Mark and his community. And, you know, that in the end, when they run away, that's the last word for them. And Mark has hope for disciples in circles not associated with the 12. And I think that's going too far. This would be one of the points that I would point to, the possible double entendre in opisomou, to argue that the disciples can be rehabilitated in the end, and that Mark expects that they will. You know, that because Jesus does say, you know, 2 times that after he's risen, he'll go before them into Galilee, and there they'll see him. You know, so there is hope for them in the end, despite their stupidity, despite their abandoning Jesus. But it is an exegetical debate, and you know, and Mark definitely is the hardest on the disciples of all the gospels. He's the most negative about them. It's interesting here that Peter is, you know, Jesus turns and he sees the disciples as a whole, but he rebukes only Peter. But I think there's some, Mark is associating Peter with the others. So it's not just him as an individual, but he is associated with a larger group of disciples, for good or ill.
Yes. By the way, did I hear correctly that at the beginning you said that the disciples are becoming stupider and stupider?
I said that some people think that, and I think there is some evidence for that. Yeah.
Yes. My question was about English language.
Oh yeah.
One can say this, not more stupid and more stupid, but stupider and stupider.
Yes. Or
Okay.
colloquial, we'd say dumb and dumber. And I think that's even the name of some stupid comedy.
Okay. Yes, I just now opened your commentary because I think that this is a very important passage, and we should look at it closer. Yes. Here's your commentary, and let's make it a bit more. Okay. You spoke here about 3 interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
As in order for Peter to be off to get out of Jesus' sight, as an injunction for Peter to get out of Jesus' way, and as a command to Peter to resume the path of discipleship. I looked at the usage of opiso, both in the Septuagint and in the New Testament. And it seems that contrary to what to the translation that I suggest in my text, in our dialogue, probably apisa implies following Jesus. There's no other way to explain opiso here. You said that in favor of first suggestion, and as an order for Peter to be often get out of Jesus' sight. Matthew Black cited the Septuagint, 2 Kings 9:19. But this is not certain interpretation. I would even say that this is a wrong interpretation. Because if we look at our Septuagint, 2 Kings 9:19 and 18. 9:18. Here we have the expression epistrophe esta opisomu, but this is just an almost word for word translation so el harai, and it seems that in the original Hebrew narrative the picture is like this: an army led by a rebellious general is going to the king's residence. The king does not understand what is going on, so he sends horse riders to meet the approaching army and to ask what is going there. And the leader of this rebellious army tells the messenger that just forget about your king and join me and go together with me in our march on the king's residence. So this is also an invitation to go together, an invitation to become follower of the rebellious general Yehu. That's the meaning of the Hebrew term Sov el Ahrai, and the Greek text renders this more or less literally. I think that probably during this literal translation, the translator understood what is going on, so it was not only literal but meaningful as well. I do not see how this text can serve as an argument in favor of Black's interpretation that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's almost an over literal translation, isn't it?
Yes, this is one of the most literally translated parts of the Septuagint. Wait a second. But if we do not count this passage in 2 Kings 9:19, elsewhere, everywhere, opiso or ta opiso means being behind or following. Grammatically, it is, though the parallel with Matthew that I just mentioned is very interesting and important for equating Peter with Satan and just telling him go away. But I think that opiso probably prevents any kind of that kind of interpretation.
Yeah, I think that's a good argument.
Yes, in your commentary, as concerns the meaning of opiso, I couldn't find any other examples of opiso which in context where opiso might have meant from me. Always behind.
Yep.
Kind of following.
I mean, I guess it's just that the context here is so combative. You know, that's probably what pushes people to interpret opiso in a more negative way.
Yes. So especially if we look at the following verse, which speaks about following Jesus. Eiti steli opisomu akultein. There's definitely some play, some interplay between these two verses.
Yeah, that's a very important observation, I think.
So the following disciple after Christ. And then I also read in your commentary the parallel that is also very important, namely John 21 verses 20 through 22. John 21 verses 20 to 22. Second. You mentioned that there are some links between these two stories, both in the usage of the verb epistrepho. Even, as far as I remember, in the same form.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Jesus epistrophes kai dontus metatas, and then John Peter epistrophes blepiton metaten. And this short story, Peter starts talking to Jesus and asking him about the beloved disciple, the fate of the beloved disciple. Verse 21. And verse 22. Jesus stops this dialogue with Peter by saying, "Su moi akolutei." Follow me.
Yeah, there's even a a faint link with the larger Markan context, because at the end of chapter 8, you're going to have Jesus, or the beginning of chapter 9, Jesus says that there are some who won't taste death until they see the kingdom come in power. So,
Yes.
and that's often taken to be a version of this, or the John saying is taken to be a version of that. That
Yes.
he
So,
won't die. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah, I say that there. Yeah.
Yes. So this. Once again, we do not have exact parallel to this passage in John and Mark, but it seems that can we suggest that both the tradition of Mark draws upon here and John have something in common?
Right. Yeah. That's what I suggest here. And I say that they may be both drawing on a pre-existent sequence of sayings. Unless you want to think that John knows Mark, which, some would argue, especially these days. But I'm still not convinced that he's read Mark as a literary work. But there's parallels of theme, and it's not just one parallel, but several. And then some similarities of language, like opisomu.
Yes. So we come to a very interesting picture that here we have, on the one hand, the interplay between verse 33 and the next one, Eupage opisomum, etis teri opisomum akolotein. Then also some interplay with the story of temptation in Q. And then also some sort of interplay with the ending of the Gospel of John, the image of Peter in the end of the Gospel of John.
And one other connection I'd like to draw is, so we said in verse 33, Jesus is not just dealing with Peter alone, but with the disciples, right? Idon tous mathetas. So in verse 34, he gives this saying about, taking up your cross and following me. He's addressing the disciples, but also ton ochlon. So in both cases, there's a widening of the circle of who's being addressed. In the one case, it's not just Peter, but also the disciples as a whole. And then verse 34, it's not just the disciples, but also the crowd, who I think in the Gospels often stand for the group that can possibly become disciples, that can go either way.
Okay. But can you imagine an author, let it be Mark, that can combine in one passage, in one pericope, so many connections with different traditions.
Well, I can imagine it if the author, lives in a world where he's been formed by these sort of traditions and he and his community think about them a lot. And, that's the world that they live in. Is this world formed by biblical texts and by traditions about Jesus? That's their world. They didn't have TV and internet. They weren't as distracted as we were, but they knew what they did have very well.
Yes, so on the one hand, the author, let's say it was Mark, had in mind the story of Jesus' temptation by Satan, where Satan tries to make Jesus think about what is human, not what belongs to God. And Jesus rebukes him, saying, "Hypage Satan, hypage Satana." On the other hand, our author keeps in mind some tradition about Jesus telling Peter to follow him on the background of other disciples, whether these disciples are going to die or are still alive. And also this topic of following Jesus, yes, opisomou akoutein. And then our author combines all these images in one phrase, hypage opisomou Satana, which at the same time identifies Peter with the devil from the Q story of temptation, and at the same time invites him to be Jesus' follower.
Yeah, that's a lot in one little passage, but I think it's plausible. And I think, it is important. It shows that, like, even if you're identified with Satan in some way, and there the boundaries are still porous, right? You can move, you can fall into the realm of Satan, but then you can come back.
Yes. Okay.
Which I think, the exorcism stories that are so prominent in Mark also show.
So it is also a kind of exorcism in some sense, because Peter is somehow pictured as possessed by Satan, but at the same time, by the very calling him Satana, Jesus performs an act of exorcism, making Peter back into his follower.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Now Maria wants to see some sort of echo of Job here.
Okay, wait a second.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how do you think whether there is an allusion to Job? Because in first two chapters, both conversations between God and Satan, they are ended with phrase and Satan went away from God.
Yeah. I mean, I think whenever you would have a passage where there's a direct confrontation between God and Satan, a biblically literate reader would think of the beginning of Job. And the other thing that you're pointing to is that Satan goes away.
Yeah. And it's like it could be an allusion to this place, but reformulated in order to connect Saturn Peter here with disciples, something like that.
I see. Okay. You mean because Job is ultimately something like a disciple? I mean, Job is ultimately in the right.
Not Job, not Saturn, because Peter is disciple.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, of course, yeah, the image of Satan has developed from Job to like New Testament times, and right, he's no longer just like God's prosecuting attorney, but he's become more independent and more of an obviously evil figure, not just a tempter. Right? Would you say?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
still, the Job passage is has obviously been formative. I mean, these later conceptions have developed, stuff from that passage and maybe turned it in a different and more dualistic way. I mean, this is really a powerful passage, and it's no wonder that Matthew rehabilitates it somewhat. I mean, he makes the picture of Peter, he still has some negative features of it, but then, Jesus praises Peter, and it's the atmosphere, I think, is significantly changed, and Peter is significantly rehabilitated in Matthew's version of it.
But Matthew also has this rather harsh saying.
Yeah,
doesn't
he still has the saying, yeah.
In this case, what do you mean by rehabilitation?
Well, I mean, that, I mean, Jesus says to him, "Blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven." And he says that I'm giving you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. So I mean, then after that we have the rebuke of Peter, but he doesn't call him Satan, right? Matthew chapter 16, verse 22. Well, no, sorry. No, I'm wrong about that. In 16:23, he does call him Satan.
Yes.
And he says that you're a scandalon. But there's more positive stuff in the larger context about Peter and what he says than there is in Mark's context. I guess that's what I mean.
Okay. Then we have the most important question of all, addressed especially to our Russian-speaking audience. И как же нам все это перевести теперь? Если у нас текст находится так вот на пересечении разных путей с разными ассоциациями, то мне прежде кажется, что, возможно, вот такой перевод «враг» с большой буквы, он как-то у нас может хорошо подойти для этого, как сказал Джоэль, double entendre. Потому что, с одной стороны, это у нас и одно из традиционных для русской литературы имен дьявола, враг, да, приложение твоей вражи на голову твою. Но, с другой стороны, это у нас все-таки и не то же самое, что прямо-таки вот назвать Петра дьяволом. То есть здесь вот немножко, правда, по-другому, но такая передача, мне кажется, она отражает, вот, если верно, то, что мы видим здесь в греческом тексте, с одной стороны, и отсылку к имени главы демонов, и одновременно вот ту самую память о слове сатан или сатана, которая еще звучит как именно нарицательное. Окей. А что делать за ЮПГ и описанную? Потому что если ориентироваться на параллели с Матфеем, это прочь враг, без всякого от меня. А если ориентироваться на следование, то тогда все-таки описанную это за мной. Получается, что такое вроде бы прочь за мной враг. Может быть, действительно здесь какие-то две разные вещи наложились друг на друга в греческом тексте с их разными ассоциациями. Но как нам их наложить друг на друга и передать в русском тексте? Что скажете, native speakers of Russian language? Отец Ириней, я вижу, вы подняли руку. А ваш iPhone?
Да.
Да.
Сейчас могу говорить?
Да, вас слышно вполне.
Ага, спасибо. Вы знаете, у меня вот какая мысль родилась в отношении того, что «иди за мной, сатана». Вот смотрите, мы вспоминаем в библейских текстах ситуацию, когда дьявол становится одесную героя по правую сторону. И в книге Иова тоже среди сынов Божьих приходит сатана. Вот как будто все время рядышком, вместе с ангельскими силами, иногда даже стоит по правую сторону. И то, что Христос говорит Петру как сатане, ну, условно скажем, в кавычках сатане, иди за мною, то есть он, в принципе, его понижает в достоинстве. То есть если сатана, он всегда был рядышком для выполнения всяких злых поручений, например, для наказания кого-то, то тут Христос как бы ему говорит, уйди с дороги, не путайся под ногами, иди за мною, но не впереди меня и не сбоку от меня. Ну, может быть, моя мысль сумасшедшая, но вот решил ее высказать, коль вы предложили native speakers выразить свои мысли. Спасибо.
Спасибо. И как бы предложили в этом случае русский текст, на который мы сейчас смотрим, переформулировать?
Ну, вы знаете, я бы все-таки по всему тексту, как было сегодня уже предложено, оставил единообразие в терминологии. То есть там, где в греческом встречается какое-то слово, по всему переводу находить ему одинаковый эквивалент. То есть если вы в других местах употребляете слово «лукавый» или «сатана», или «враг», то везде одинаково, где употребляется слово «сатана», употребляет то же самое слово. То есть я бы, наверное, оставил бы «иди за мной, сатана», а не просто «враг». Но так вот ярче, контрастней, ассоциативный ряд шире.
Но вы собственно, сочетание глагола с описо приводите как и предлагаете перевести как «иди за мной». Тогда у нас теряется вот та самая перекличка с Матфеем из Кью.
Ну, чем-то приходится жертвовать.
Ну что же.
So you have only one vote for за мной?
No, we haven't voted yet.
Oh, okay.
We're rather discussing.
Нет, я думаю, что надо их разделить просто, юпаге и описому. Оставите прочь и за мной каким-то образом.
А как мы их будем писать в качестве такой вот дроби в знаменателе одна интерпретация, в числителе другая? Или как?
Через «и».
Или через запятую.
Хорошо. И как тогда это оно у нас будет выглядеть? Например, прочь,
Отойди
запятая.
прочь и стой за мной. Не знаю, что-то такое должно быть.
Ну, тогда уж не стой. Стой здесь точно нет. Здесь. Уходи прочь, иди за мной.
Но это будет странно звучать. Мне кажется, все-таки идея это, что он должен отойти, но как бы и быть за спиной его. Да? То есть, что такая как бы идея подчинения. Ну,
А у
как
нас,
такая constructive pregnancy.
а у нас ЮПГ по ПИСу может означать вот, без всяких теологических обертонов и интертекстуальной перекличек, может просто-напросто это сочетание греческих слов означать «отойди и встань за мной». Потому что у нас с глаголами хождения у нас по ПИСу означает не отойди куда-то и встань, а именно следуй за. Вот, и тут, конечно же, еще встает вопрос о семантике глагола юпагу. Здесь у меня еще одна. Сейчас, когда я думал, параллель возникла с Матфеем, совсем другая, с другой стороны, можно сказать. Матфей 26, 24. Here, 26, 24, I believe. Из Хомена Гиосту антропу Юпагей, который с Геграптом переауту. Такое редкое употребление глагола юпагу. Он как бы уходит, получается, да? Куда он уходит? Он уходит на Голгофу. И дальше синодальный текст не передает здесь это. Пишет просто идет. На юпагу это именно не идти, а уходить. Да?
Почему? Может быть, и просто идти.
Да, но все-таки это идти скорее покидая какое-то место, да? Ну, можно Просто посмотреть глагол «юпагу».
Mark also uses hupago in the parallel passage in Mark 14,
Мгм.
for the Son of Man going.
Yes. Okay. Let's.
Ну вот я смотрю словарь, бывает юпаго, эйс, какой-нибудь полен, например. Да, в смысле, что он откуда-то ушел и пошел в другой город. Не знаю, мне кажется,
Да-да-да.
отойди, чтобы встать за мной. Почему нет?
А у нас такая конструкция прегнос возможна? Хоть в классическом греческом, хоть в еврейском греческом. Мне как-то это не очевидно.
Ну, хорошо.
Вот.
Так а как вы предлагаете тогда?
Но мне кажется, что вот здесь действительно очень правдоподобно какие-то две разных вещи, две разных картинки друг на друга накладываются. Одна картинка.
Тогда если мы считаем, что это две разных, тогда, значит, нормально, что сказано коряво. Не знаю, что и вы как-то себе противоречите. С одной стороны, говорите, что так невозможно по-гречески, но я согласна, что это какой-то такой композит странный. Тогда мы можем его переводить тоже странно. Да?
Нет, вот в этой картинке, грубо говоря, что перед нами какая-то такая дробь с числительными и знаменателем, где в числительном написанное понимается одно, а в знаменателе написанное понимается другое. Мне кажется, вот там, где речь идет про «иди прочь», там нет описа, там просто «юпаге сатана», как в Матфеи. А там, где у нас есть описо, там, получается, как бы нет обращения сатана, а есть вот что-то другое. Да, вот, да, как иди за мной.
Ну, я не очень понимаю, почему вам не нравится это передать просто через «и».
А как и? Прочь и следуй за мной. В смысле, какой русский watching?
Да, вот что-то такое, да.
Вот. Ну вот пишет Ирина, что может потому что прочь обращено к сатане, который искушает Петра, а иди за мной к самому Петру. Ну,
Ну да.
такое совсем получается.
Но мне кажется, что да, какие-то такие странные интерпретации, они будут приходить в голову, ну и хорошо.
А.
Я не вижу в этом проблемы как-то.
Хорошо, тогда
Это в
продиктуй.
любом случае лучше, чем только один вариант выбрать. Да?
Да. Хорошо, тогда продиктуйте, что нам написать.
I like Irina's suggestion
Угу.
in the chat. Interesting.
Я уже сказала свой вариант.
Маша, значит, просто его не расслышала. Я записываю просто под диктовку под вашу.
Отойди, встань за мной, я сказала.
Но там же не стань, а следуй.
Я предложила свой вариант, а другие могут предложить свой.
Хорошо.
Для меня это встань, оно снимает некоторую противоречивость этих двух выражений. И как бы создает какой-то такой образ, который может себе представить, и который, с одной стороны, оба эти смысла передает, а с другой стороны, не звучит совсем уж дико. И, на мой взгляд, это похоже на то, что то есть юпаге означает, так сказать, движение, что он должен, так сказать, двигаться в сторону от Иисуса, а писему означает местоположение, где он должен оказаться. Вот, в этом смысле «отойди и встань за мной» хорошо передает эти два смысла, как я себе это вижу. С одной стороны, движение от, а с другой стороны, местоположение, где он должен оказаться в итоге.
Окей.
Но я, естественно, не настаиваю на том, чтобы это ввести в ваш перевод.
Да. Хорошо. Еще какие-нибудь у нас есть предложения?
I guess the central problem is, I mean, I like this idea of Jesus, telling Peter, become my disciple again. But the problem with it is telling somebody you've just called Satan to be your disciple. It's just the contrast between those that is difficult. Huh.
Ну что же. Ладно. Будет у нас время на досуге еще подумать о том, что делать с этим стихом. Do you want to add anything more about verses 32 or 33? Joel?
No, I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and it's a very difficult passage.
Друзья, есть на что-нибудь еще, что кто бы ни был хотел бы добавить, спросить или предложить по поводу стихов 32-33?
I still want to hear from Joel about Messiah and Son of Man, but
All right.
it's in
Yeah.
late again. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think Mark uses those terms somewhat interchangeably, but yeah, let's talk about Son of Man maybe next time.
Okay.
I'll even
Probably we can. Joel, if you would like to share with us some of your thoughts about the Son of Man, then we can start our next meeting
okay.
with your talk.
Okay, yeah. Did I ever send you? I have like a 2-part article about Son of Man. I
But
sent that to you. Yeah. But I'm not sure if it's right, but okay. I'll make a note to
Okay.
myself Write lecture about Son of Man. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
I'll say a few things about Son of Man next time.
Okay.
Syn человеческий.
Yes. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. До свидания.
Спасибо всем, кто был с нами.
До скорого.
До скорого.
До свидания.
До свидания.
До свидания, спасибо, спасибо.
Спасибо, до свидания.